webinar on challenges of growing your professional services firm with Marios Siathas and Higham. Let me get some admin issues out of the way first. We are recording this event. We will have an audio recording of this session available for you probably next week, so keep an eye out for that. We'll also have a full transcript of the hour-long event. That should take us probably 2 weeks to get out, and I will basically blog about that too, so keep an eye out for that too. If you have any questions for either Marios or Richard, you can use your control panel to basically submit the questions under the question tab, and I'll make sure to actually forward those questions to Marios so that he can incorporate them into the webinar. With that said, I'm going to introduce Marios, and then Marios is going to take over, and hope you guys have a great discussion. So Marios Siathas is the General Manager of the European Institute of Management and Finance in Nicosia, Cyprus. He has extensive experience in the area of executive education, learning and development and consulting. For the past 14 years, he worked as the Director of Executive Education at the Cyprus International Institute of Management, CIIM. His prior experience include the position of Manager of Corporate Training Programs at the University of Guelph in Canada and in Business Development for the Houlihan's Group in the United States. During his long-lasting career in executive education, he has gained extensive experience in working with organizations and individuals and in building specialized and unique learning and development solutions for them. He has managed several development projects for large and small companies in Cyprus, Egypt, Austria, Bahrain, Greece, Canada, China, Dubai, and South Africa. With that said, the floor is all yours, Marios, and hope you guys have a great discussion. Cheers.
Okay, hi. Thanks, Matteo. Thanks, Matteo. Hi, everyone. So excited to be doing this with Richard. So, without anything else, let me just say a couple of things about Richard, and then we can get started. Richard has an extensive experience in sales and business development. He has worked with many professional service firms and from several parts of the world. I'm not going to say anything more than that. I'll just welcome Richard, welcome every one of you, and just start with that question with Richard. Before I move to the first question, to ask Richard if he wants to say another couple of things as part of the introduction before we start. Richard?
Great. Well, first of all, it's really great to be with you. I'm speaking to you from near Glasgow in Scotland, where the sky is grey, but life is good. I think this is a really important topic, and what I want to do is share with you one looking back on what for me is now 25 years of working with professional service firms and financial institutions, right through from the global banks to Big Four accounting firms, through to niche and very specialist players, and across all 5 continents. Haven't done anything in Antarctica, but apart from that, we cover the ground. I think it's good to look back, but it's more important to look forward, because winning business over the period 2020 to 2040 is going to be radically different from what we've experienced in the past. So I think we need to learn from the past, that's for sure, but we need to plan for the future.
All right. So great. So let me start. As we said, as Matteo said, we gathered a few questions from the community, and we are going to be asking these questions to Richard today. So Richard, starting off, a very interesting question, which is something we all talk about, and it's something that everyone will ask anyone when they're suggesting doing a new business, and it usually has to do with the competitive advantage of that firm. What is it different from you? How can, and the question is pretty much how can a professional expert, which pretty much does something that, let's say, anyone else can do, can find their own unique selling proposition? How can they create a competitive advantage, and what can they do to differentiate themselves from the competition? So how can they create a competitive advantage? How can they find their own unique selling proposition, and what can they do to differentiate themselves from the competition?
Okay, thanks Marios, and thanks for whoever asked that really important question. And it's one that I hear again and again, and a lot of professionals get very upset because folks, a lot of you look and sound the same to people like me, your clients. You wear the same clothes, you carry the same ultra-thin briefcase, you have a Mont Blanc pen, you're very well presented, and then I say to you, so what makes you different? I say, oh, well, it's our people. I say, but you all look the same to me. So, oh, well, no, we're very different. I say, well, what makes you different? And it all goes quiet. So I think we need to think really hard about how we differentiate ourselves. I think one of the things that we can do to differentiate ourselves is to ask ourselves a great question that David Maister, so-called guru's guru, used to ask people. He said, what do you want to be famous for? What is it about you that will mark you out? It may well be that you have very specific expertise in a geography, or that you have outstanding technical knowledge, or you're very well connected. But just ask yourself, what do you want to be famous for? I think secondly, think about the difference between how you differentiate yourself with your early stage contacts and how you then differentiate yourself later in the sales process. When your clients, your prospects, are looking at you in the early stages, the big question they're asking is, could you do this work? Are you competent? Are you capable? Are you credible? So in the early stages, we need to differentiate ourselves on our capability, our credibility. But once I've shortlisted you, I've already decided that you're capable. I've already decided that you could do the job. Now, my question is, what are you going to be like to work with? So in the early stages, I think we differentiate ourselves on capability, on credibility. But in the later stages, we differentiate ourselves on our character, what we're going to be like to work with. I do think there's one other way in which we can think about differentiating ourselves, and that's how we position ourselves, how we make ourselves stand out. And I'll talk later, because I think there have been some questions on social media and so forth. But think about how you communicate with your clients. You know, a few years ago, every slide presentation, every PowerPoint presentation had the bullet points. They all looked the same. Big white screen and bullet points. And there's still an awful lot of those presentations around. Now people are using much more graphical ways of communicating. But you don't have to always be the same. The biggest single project I ever won, I won without PowerPoint and just with an A3 piece of laminated paper, which we placed in front of every member of the panel with a pen to write on that and with the key points of our presentation on it. And we just talked our way through it. So think about how you're going to differentiate yourself. I suggest you don't differentiate yourself completely on your dress sense of wearing the Mickey Mouse tie or whatever. That said, my stepbrother, who's a guy called Justin Urquhart Stewart, who's the marketing director of 7 Investment Managers, has branded himself purely on his appearance on the TV and so forth. He always wears a white shirt, but he always has a red spotty hanky either around his neck or in his pocket. So maybe personal appearance is the differentiator, but I'm not sure it's the best one. Marios, does that give you some answers?
Yes, definitely does. I will come back. I keep something I will come back and ask you later because I think it's connected to something else. But I will move into the, I might just add on this that I think that having a clear strategy of where you want your firm to go. I mean, because marketing,
Yep.
selling, and everything else are pretty much tactics and tools and actions you can do. But clearly identifying a holistic strategy and not being so kind of concrete. I think that we need flexibility nowadays. So kind of developing a strategy, being flexible with your strategy, start implementing a few things, especially for not just a new firm. This goes for every firm, I think. I think that would be very helpful as well in identifying unique selling proposition and differentiate it from competition, because sometimes we just move along the sidelines. We look at what others do and just copy and change a few things around, which is not bad, because if something works, it's good, but it's good to know what our firm stands for before we go on that journey of getting new clients or starting a new company, a new firm.
And yeah, if I can respond to that, I think probably the biggest single differentiator for us at the moment is the ability to show that you are customer-centric. So and I know we should address this as we go through, but really showing that you are focused on what your clients are looking for, not pushing always your own agenda, but really identifying what are the real issues that your clients are looking at. That in turn will help you develop your own strategic plan. But there's no point in having a strategic plan that meets your business goals but doesn't meet your client's business needs. So I think client centricity should be the biggest differentiator.
Yes, for sure. So talking about clients, my next question, what is more important, again, from a member of the tax-linked community, what is more important to win clients, expertise or networking?
Okay, I looked at, as I thought about this question, there's a short answer and a long answer. And the short answer is to win a client, networking; to keep and grow a client, expertise. You won't keep a client unless you are a knowledgeable, effective, useful professional. But the networking needs to be content rich, because why are people going to make contact with you? Well, they're going to speak to you because your existing clients speak well of you. Why will your existing clients speak well of you? Because you've given them good expertise. So you can't separate out networking from expertise. So if you are,
so I guess you need to always keep networking there. You cannot stop networking
yes.
with people.
Yeah.
And then
content-rich networking.
Yes, and then expertise to keep them happy and being, pretty much providing what they expect.
Yes, but I think the extra is now there's an expectation that we will share our expertise not just with our clients, but with our potential clients. So in the old days, I think we said, if you want my expertise, start paying me, and when the clock is running, I'll share my expertise with you. I think increasingly our network expects us to be sharing knowledge. So I currently have just under 2,000 people who are following me on LinkedIn, and they're expecting me to share ideas and share expertise. And it's that expertise that builds the relationship that will turn them from interested prospects into clients.
Okay, very good. Thanks a lot. So in our next workshop, talking about marketing, and because you just mentioned also a media channel, what marketing channels work better? In general, what do you find that is best for professionals in this sector in terms of general marketing channels?
Okay, I think it's got to be a mix. So it's very rare that one single channel will give you all the answers. I think that the way that people are buying is changing. So we've got to change the way that we're reaching out to those buyers. So Google gives some data which says that something like 56% of buyers would say that they, or 56% of the decision to buy in a business-to-business context is taken before I meet a human being. Some data from Google indicates that some 75 or more % of buyers are using social media as part of their buying process. And IBM have data which says that 92% of buyers are saying that they won't take a cold call from somebody that they've never had any contact with before. So if there's a changing buying world out there, there needs to be a changing approach from us. People continue to buy from people. This is a human business. It's not a robotic business yet. So we need to figure out, well, how do we build relationships so that people want to talk with us? So still for me, the use of referrals and introductions is right at the top of my list. People talking to people that their trusted friends trust. How we get those referrals? I'm sorry.
Okay. No, continue. I was going to say, so basically you need the backbone, you need something you have to use your media channels, your online presence and all this activity going on to keep, but you still need to have the personal contact. So the personal contact is the one who's going to win the clients. But people will go and search for you on Google. People will.
Yeah. The personal contact is increasingly mediated through social media. So for instance, just this morning, I got a LinkedIn mail from somebody who said, I see you've changed what you're doing. We haven't spoken for some time. I've got a particular issue. Could we speak? Now, that's based on a good personal relationship over a number of years. But I haven't got the time, and he hasn't got the time to just be picking the phone in the hope that there's something there. It's social media and my social media presence that has encouraged him to reach out to me. So I think social media, which at the moment predominantly in most markets is LinkedIn, but it's not the only market or the only channel. I think that's absolutely key. I think speaking and looking for opportunities to speak, whether it's online like this or at conferences, is key. And there's just nothing to beat getting out into the marketplace and meeting people and talking to people to build our presence and our expertise. In the pharmaceutical industry, they talk about walking the halls, that you've got to be visible, you've got to be seen, and we need to make ourselves seen. I hope that gives some sense. So social media is key.
All right.
Presence in your marketplaces is key, and speaking, whether online or in person, is key.
All right, very good. How can, in general, another question which is focusing on client again, how can we grow, it's a question, how can I grow my practice in a way that meets my goals while at the same time staying focused on what is best for the client? So sometimes I guess there is a conflict of sorts in terms of what is best for the firm and what is best for the client. So how do you stay focused on what is best for the client and also growing your firm in terms of growth?
Okay. Whenever I think about this, I think the real answer lies that it shouldn't be a conflict. And we've got to find a way for it not to be a conflict. It can be a tension, and a tension in the sense in which a bridge is held up by a tension. So it should be a positive stress, a positive tension, not a negative conflict, if that makes sense. I think we've got to recognize that unless we are focused on our customer needs, we won't have a business. So we've got to manage that as a tension and say, I've got to be focused on my customers' needs. I've got to be doing what my customers need and want me to do. So I think one of the answers lies on picking the right customers, the right clients, and the right projects. So let me just give you a concrete example. If your business and your goal for your firm is to build up recurring annuity income rather than one-off project fees, because you want to build the embedded value of your firm, maybe with a view to an exit. So what you want is continuous, consistent business. Then choose the client who can give you continuous, consistent business. That might mean saying, I'm not going to go for the very biggest, most complex clients who will only buy me when their internal expertise runs out. Instead, I'm going to focus on slightly smaller organizations where they're going to need my input and my expertise on a regular basis because they don't have it in-house. That would be one way of choosing your clients where you'll be meeting their needs in a way that will meet the needs of your firm. So I think a lot of it's about selecting the right clients and the right projects and accepting that you will only have a sustainable business if you're focused on your client's needs. I don't know how that resonates with the many people that we've got on the call, Marios, but that's certainly been my experience.
Look, I guess a follow-up question on this would be in terms of the growth. I guess a growth of a practice of a firm which can create this tension means if you're growing your business, you're also hiring staff. So you end up having some of your clients that you have to give to some of your new staff. They have to start behaving in a different way, or they have to behave in the same way. So I guess that's an issue within the firm as well that is created. And also the type of the clients. You have your local clients, you have regional, you have your global clients. Different expectations. Once you get out of your own country, let's say, and you're getting, you have a Cypriot client, let's say in Cyprus, but you have a Scotland, we have a Cypriot firm serving a Scottish client who has a different experience. So that all comes with the growth. So I guess is that what you're calling a tension? This is what the tension in growth means?
I think that is a real tension in the growth is, and that's a big question about how do we move from selling ourselves as an individual, so our clients are buying the individual, or are they buying the firm? And that's a very, very big question. I think the tension I was talking about more is the tension between what I want and need as a firm and what my clients want and need. And I think that's the main tension to manage. If I try and bring the two together, let's say that I'm personally overstretched. I can't meet the needs of my clients. I bring somebody else on. I need to think how I use that new person. And it might be that I introduce them to an existing client to do some work that they can do very effectively, but I stay in contact with the client so that I'm very visible. I think one of the things which clients dislike very strongly is the fact that they always used to deal with the partner, and then the partner is always there when they're selling, and then the partner disappears in the project, and it's left to junior people. I think clients really resent that. So I think we need to find ways to stay in light touch contact with our existing clients as well as our prospects.
Okay, thanks. So a question in terms of the clients, how can I balance a big question here again? You have your clients, they need you, they call you, you get constant requests from them, but you want to also find new clients. So how do you balance that? Winning new businesses and looking after the existing clients you already have.
Okay, I think this is a huge question in professional services and in financial services. One of the things I hear almost more than anything else is, how do I avoid the so-called feast and famine? When I'm busy, I'm focused completely on my clients, meeting their needs, working on projects. And I'm so focused on my existing clients that I don't do any business development. I haven't got time, I don't have the energy. Then the existing project comes to an end and I have a large gap in my schedule, but I don't have any way of filling it because it takes whatever, 1 month, 3 months, 1 year, 2 years to find that new client. So what's the answer, and how do we avoid this feast and famine? And the answer is to always keep some activity going in business development, even when you're at your most busy. And that might mean saying, right, I'm going to dedicate 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week just to reaching out to my marketplace. I'm not going to disappear from my marketplace. It may well be, as a rule of thumb, I would always say to people that at least 10%, probably at least 20% of our time needs to be spent on active business development, even when we're at our most busy looking after our existing clients. I think we need to think about how we can do light touch maintenance of the relationship, even when we're at our most busy. And again, I think that's going to involve social media, so that when our prospects have a need in our niche of expertise, you or I am the first person that they think of. Maybe I can illustrate this with a story. Would that be okay?
Yes, yes, we love stories. I love stories. I hope everybody else does.
Good. So I had a big client in Dublin in Ireland, and I was going over to see them about a project. I had a lot of meetings with them, and I realized that I'd not been in touch with another client who'd not done any work with me for about a year, 18 months. So I just rang him up and I said, Brian, I'm going to be in Dublin with a client. It'd be really great to catch up. Let's have a cup of coffee. And he said, yeah, sure. And we set this up. So already my airfare is paid, my accommodation is paid by the client. My costs are covered. So I'm going into the reception of this company. It's a big life assurance company, small project. And I'm sitting there in reception and I'm thinking, I'm really embarrassed to be here. because I haven't spoken to Brian for at least a year. And now I'm sitting in his reception saying, have you got any business for me? What am I going to say? This is embarrassing. Should have been in touch with him. Da, da, da. So I look up and there's Brian coming through from the office area through into reception. He's got a big smile on his face. I'm just getting ready to say, Brian, I'm so sorry I've not been in touch. Oh, it's really been so busy. And he gives me a big smile and he says, Richard, before we start, can I just thank you so much for keeping in touch with me so well? And I'm thinking, what? You're joking. I haven't spoken to you for 12 months. Are you messing me about? And I said, oh, that's great, Brian, trying to change my thinking. That's great. What do you mean? And he said, oh, well, I really appreciated that post that you put on LinkedIn. The blog that you put out on such and such was really great. Oh, and you put me in touch with a really useful expert in a completely different field. And you did this and you did that. Now, I was almost unaware that I'd been doing these things because most of it had just been through a little bit of social media, sending the odd email, seeing an article, copying him in on an article, suggesting to somebody that they speak to Brian. Very, 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 very little effort. And yet the perception was that I'd been active, even though we hadn't been working together for those 18 months. So I think we've got to stay active in the marketplace. Maybe it's something as simple as a rule of thumb I set myself is every time an existing client pays me a big compliment for some good work I've done, I always ask for an introduction or a referral. I don't ask for referrals for people who aren't pleased with the work I've done. I don't ask for referrals at the wrong time. But when somebody says, great job, Richard, then I ask them for a referral. So I think it's about keeping the activity going, Marios.
Okay, and adding on to this question, then I like the kind of ratio you gave, like an 80% doing business for clients and 20% selling to new clients, and having a balance. I think that's good. Now, in terms of, because we all know how hard it is to win new clients. I mean, it's especially when you already have clients. Sometimes it's much harder to win new clients because you already have the existing clients. So how do you manage that to avoid these peak and troughs of winning new clients, or how you can achieve growth in let's say if it's in a low growth volatile economy? Let's say we are going through one now as well. How do you achieve to get more clients when things are hard?
Okay. I think the first thing to do is to recognize that this is the world that we live in. The American military talk about the concept of VUCA. The world that we live in is volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous. And there's a temptation to think that, well, we're just going through a phase. Life's difficult at the moment, but it's going to come back to a nice, stable environment. And everyone I read on this subject is saying we're living in a volatile world, so we better get used to it. So the first thing I think I'd say is don't just sit there and wait for things to come back to normal, because the normal of the past is not the normal of the future. So we need to look on this volatility and this low growth as an opportunity, not just as a threat. It requires a lot of activity. It requires a recognition in a volatile world that your best clients who've provided you with steady business, maybe for many years, may well change. So you better get out there. I'll give you a concrete example. Very good friend of mine, selling professional services, excellent guy. His main client was a very big healthcare business. I won't mention the name, well-known brand. They recently, about a year ago, had a change of chief executive. My friend Chris had developed really good relationships with the CEOs and the COOs and the CFOs of a lot of the operating companies in different countries. Suddenly, with the change of CEO, his business dried up almost completely. Not because he'd been doing a bad job, but because their business had changed. So in a volatile world, we've got to have a plan B and a plan C. We can't assume that plan A will continue. So that underlines the importance to stay active in the marketplace. Secondly, I think that in a volatile world, we've got to recognize that your conversion ratio is likely to be lower than it has been in the past. And that deals that you thought were in the bag and that you were relying on may well change at the last minute. I had a very painful experience at the end of last year. We'd worked our way through a whole series of processes with a prospect. We knew we were in the last 3. We then knew we were in the last 2. All the signs were right. And in the end, we lost the business by a vote of 4-3 on the buying group. And when I look back on it, it was almost impossible to predict, because the decision was so finely balanced, it was almost impossible to predict that we wouldn't get that. So volatility means don't rely on what you've got. It means don't think that your bankers will definitely turn into business. I think it means 2 other things in low growth. It means, 1, we've got to look for our clients' strategic imperatives. In a low growth economy, discretionary spending goes out of the window. Nice to do doesn't happen, because I, as a buyer, am not going to volunteer to spend my company's money, or indeed my own money, or if I'm a family office, my client's money. I'm not going to volunteer to spend that on things that don't really matter to me, my organization, my clients. So look for the strategic issues, not the peripheral issues. And the other thing I'd say on this selling in a low growth economy and in a volatile world is never rely on one buying contact. In a low growth volatile economy, buyers want to spread the risk. Very few want to be the one person taking a decision. So an individual client may well want to refer any decision to their lawyer on a tax issue or to their accountant on a legal issue. So you need to cover the bases. Don't rely on too narrow a decision-making base. So my summary, don't rely on your bankers. I mean the secure, supposedly secure business. 2, don't expect the same conversion ratios in the past. 3, look for strategic issues, not discretionary issues. And 4, cover the bases, widen your contacts in the decision-making process.
Okay. I have a question from the chat that was just posted actually. So let me ask that question before I move to my other questions, because it's actually relevant to the discussions we're having now. What is the best way to get new clients in a whole new market? So what is the best way to get new clients in a whole new market you are not familiar with as well? So let's say you're moving to a new market, you want to get new clients and you don't even know that new market. So what is a couple of tips from you, Richard, for that?
Okay. I think part of the answer depends on whether it's just a new market for you, but an established market for your competitors, or whether it's a new market. Some people, marketeers, talk about blue ocean, looking for the new markets. I think one of the key things is to demonstrate expertise early. So if it's a new market, you only need to be one step ahead because everyone's having to change their thinking on it. If it's an established market, it may be sensible to ally yourself or link yourself with non-competitive thought leaders in that market. So at the moment, one of the areas that I'm looking at is private equity. That's a comparatively new area for me. I've done some work there. So the way that I'm establishing myself in that area is I'm linking myself with a couple of insurance professionals who are specialized in private equity. And they're bringing me in to talk about my subject, but I'm leveraging their expertise and their knowledge of that market. So I think you can link yourself to non-competitive experts. This may be a cheap answer, but I'm going to give it anyway. Something I say to people is this: so it doesn't take long to be seen as an expert. It actually only takes 3 meetings. So my first meeting in a new market, I asked the question, what trends are you seeing in the marketplace at the moment? And they give me an answer. And I make some notes. And my second meeting in that new market, I say, one of the things that we're hearing in this marketplace is X. And I play back what my first contact has told me. And then I say, how does that resonate with you? How are you seeing things? By the time I get to my third meeting in the new market, I'm then able to say, as I spend time in this marketplace talking to people, the kind of things I'm hearing are, and then I repeat the things that contact 1 and contact 2 had told me, and then I'm saying, and how are you seeing it, and how does that compare with what you're finding? So by the time you're in your third meeting in your new market, you're an expert. I know that's a cheap comment, but there's a lot of truth in it. Listen and replay what you're hearing. So ally yourself with other experts, listen to the marketplace, join groups on things like LinkedIn, groups in the markets where you want to be engaged, and see what the issues are that are coming across there. And then I think particularly if it's new markets, maybe it's worth being willing to share some risk with your client. So one of the things that I'll do is say, right, this is a new area for most of us, for both of us. Let's look at how we could move things forward in a relatively low risk way. So let's not agree on a project that's enormous. Let's just agree on a project that's that big. Let's pilot a project and see how we go. Maybe if it's appropriate in your business, consider a risk and reward pricing policy with a lower upfront fee but a shared benefit if it's successful. So a few ideas on entering a new market.
Okay, thanks. Moving on, I guess from what you just said now, I guess I'll just follow up on one thing. I guess I like the idea of if it's a new market, of going for that small project, starting with a small client, getting one piece of a business that you can handle, I guess. You know you can finish it on time. You know you can provide your expertise. That will give you, I guess, some entry into the market. So your next client will hear good things about you. So the next one, maybe this client will give you more business. So don't go for the stars from the beginning. Just go for one small project. Go for one activity. I guess that's what you were saying earlier. Is that correct, Richard?
Yes, but I put one proviso on that, is that if I'm looking to enter a new market, I'd like to do a small project with a well-known client.
Okay.
Or a well-respected client.
Okay.
So I agree with you completely. Do the small project that you know you can handle, but
choose the client.
If you could, yeah. I was talking to a guy yesterday, just starting out, very interesting professional firm, and I said, well, so how are you starting out? He said, well, I think we've just got a trial with Zurich Re on what we're doing. We've just started some work with SAP. They're very small projects and they're pilots, and we've got another one that's looking highly likely. Now, if he can get those 3 pilots going, as soon as he's out there in the marketplace, he's got tremendous credibility.
Okay. All right. So on the same subject, I guess, since we are all going out to sell the business, since we are all having meetings, how can we find the best way of selling that is effective but appropriate as well? So effective selling and appropriate for the professional and financial services sector. And on that, I will ask the other question I have here, which is how do you make all that by don't sounding too salesy, by don't selling without being very salesy. So kind of you are having your sales meeting. How do you do all that?
Okay. I see 2 extreme risks. One is that I see professionals going through a character transformation when they start selling or when they go out selling. So when they're looking after their clients, they are very professional, come across as good guys, very effective. As soon as they start to put their selling hat on, they change character. So they go from being herbivores to carnivores. They go from being calm to being aggressive. If you know the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, they change, they just seem like completely different characters. So what I say to people is, what you're selling is an extension of your professional life. Don't change your character. Be the professional that you are. So don't get over salesy. But the other danger I see is in some EU countries, there's been such an emphasis from the regulators on mis-selling that the regulators have said, well, you can't sell at all. You just got to wait for the client to come to you. The client knows what they want. You just sit there and wait for someone to knock at your door. That passivity is not what we're talking about. So we've got to get the balance right. So here are some of the things which I see the best professionals doing well. First of all, I see the best professionals are active in their marketplace. One of the most impressive people I've worked with over recent years was the lead partner, global lead partner for banking for one of the big 4 accounting firms. And every time I wanted to meet with him, he seemed to be busy. And I said, you seem so busy. How are you spending your time? He says, I make it a rule to meet 20 clients a week. I thought, wow, that's more than many of the business development professionals I know. And this guy is just continually out there meeting people, talking to people. So one thing I'd say is be active. I think the second thing is pull don't push. What do I mean by that? Draw your clients, draw your prospects to you. By what you do, by who you are, by your reputation, make your clients want to come to you rather than pushing products at them. I think product pushing is not appropriate selling in the environment that we're working at. So invest time in understanding your clients, invest time in understanding their priorities, and then come up with solutions that are relevant. It's a consultative selling approach. The final thing I'd say, that, and the second final thing, is always offer options. I think in our environment, in professional services and financial services, I think our clients want to be engaged in their own decision making. By and large, we're dealing with experienced, intelligent people. They may not know your subject as well as you do, but they're intelligent and experienced. So I don't think they want to be told, do this. This is what you must do. What they do want to be engaged in is, based on my experience, there are probably three ways that you could address this issue. All these three ways have pluses and minuses. You could do this, you could do this, you could do this. I have a view, but what do you think is the best way of working? So give options. And I think if you do those things, we're then selling appropriately. Be active, understand the client first, and then give answers and give options. I'll just end with a comment that a very old friend of mine, currently the chairman of a FTSE 250 company, says that there are two kinds he really, really hates. The first kind are the people who come to him and tell him what he should do without asking questions. The second kind he hates are the people who come and ask lots of questions and then don't give him advice. So what he wants are people who ask questions and then give advice.
Okay, so listen to the client, but give some feedback as well. Okay.
Yes.
All right, so because I'm getting some questions from the audience now, I have another couple of questions here, but then I will go back to them. I'll just move to these questions now, because there is an interesting one. There are three interesting questions here, so I'll ask them. One is specific. The question is, what has been the most effective method of winning new clients within an accountancy firm? So if you have any examples of winning clients within an accountancy firm, any method?
Okay, yes, I do, and I think I'll just highlight a few that seem to work. I think one thing that's really important is to manage the whole sales process and recognizing that you need to align your sales process to the buying process of the client. So the most effective accounting business development are organizations who seem to know when to approach the client. And they make the approach because they understand their clients well. They approach the client at the key moments in their calendar. And sometimes that's earlier and sometimes that's later than their competitors. So, for example, if they know, I know that one firm that's won a very big piece of business with a bank, and the reason that they've won is that they know that that bank sets its budgets for spend in their area it used to be in October and now it's in September. So they know that they need to have their buying point convinced about a project in June, worst case early July, before people go on vacation, so that their contact can then promote the project and get budget in September. So I think that's one thing. I think the second thing, and this is very specific, I had a client who did an analysis. They were very concerned why their conversion rate was 35% of new business, and they knew that one of their big competitors was almost 70% conversion. So they did an analysis on what they were doing differently. And here are some of the things they did differently. This is a very specific answer to the question. One, the 70% firm said no to far more opportunities than the 35% firm. So say no more often and be more selective. The second thing that they did differently is that the more successful firm, if a big opportunity came in, they put the resources that were needed onto winning that piece of business. So the partner who was going to lead that pursuit was encouraged, in fact made, to move his current or her current business to other members of the team to free up their time. In the less successful firm, people carried on doing the day job and tried to fit the business winning in around the day job, and it didn't work. Those were the two main differences between 70% and 35% conversion. Say no more, and if you're just going to go for a piece of business, really go for it. So okay. Those are two things I've seen different.
Okay.
And those are both well-known firms of accountants.
Great. Thanks. The other question, let me see here. Okay, there's another question that just came in. Let me read the previous two. One of them is about what is a pricing question. So what is the best pricing policy in a volatile economy? And how can a starting consulting business tailor its prices in order to be suited both for small and larger clients? So pricing in volatile, and how do you price your products in a consulting business now, the question, to be suited for both smaller and larger clients?
Okay. In broad terms, in professional services, you've got three pricing strategies. One is a competitive pricing strategy. So you look at what other people are charging and you make yourself attractive compared to them. What do I need to price this at to win the business? The dangers of that. The second is a time plus pricing strategy, which says how much will it cost me to service this project? What margins do I need, and therefore what do I need to charge? And the third is a value-based pricing strategy, which says what will this give my client and how do I price it so that it's attractive to them and gives them a return. Usually your pricing strategy is going to need to be a mix of those three. I think the danger of entering a new market by being the cheapest is just a drive to the bottom. And if you're new into a market, you're probably not going to be able to sustain a low price for as long as some of your competitors are. That said, if you've got a low cost base, you may choose to reflect that in your pricing. My view is that value-based pricing is the key to success. So build the business case. Identify what the payback will be for your client and price according to where the payback is. I'll give you again a concrete example. There's a program that I was involved in, it's still running, with a large insurance company, and it was around negotiation. And in the end, the price that we achieved was a high price. And the reason it was a high price was that I'd asked the question, how much do you think your team of underwriters is leaving on the table at the moment? And eventually the answer came back that it was in excess of $10 million. Having got that figure, we were able to demonstrate how much we'd be able to save, and the price as a proportion of that saving was very low. So they perceived the value. That said, I think we've got to be very, very aware of our clients' budgeting processes at the moment. And if we're going to be value-based, we've also got to understand how they're taking their financial decisions. For instance, if we're selling into the banking sector at the moment, the real concern is the cost-income ratio quarter by quarter. And if you're selling a project that's going to negatively impact on their costs this quarter, you're probably going to have a difficult job selling it. So you may need to look for ways of making things self-financing or demonstrating a saving in the financial period. I don't know if any of that's helpful to your questioner.
Yeah. No, I think it's helpful. The only added question there was about the strategy in terms of tailoring prices to be suited both for smaller and larger clients. I don't know if you have anything to say about that. I mean, your overall approach is value-added, making sure you're offering the correct pricing and...
Okay, this is a very
Could you have a dual pricing strategy, basically? Is there something, I mean, I don't...
Well, I think your big clients will probably or may well be using procurement more than your smaller clients. And if you're talking about very big clients, they may well insist on a best-in-market price. So you need to give a guarantee that no one else is getting a better price than they are. So the bigger clients often tend to be more commoditized in their pricing than the smaller ones. I think you've got to be very, very careful in offering dual pricing. I'm not convinced. If you're following a value-based pricing model, it should be that you're willing to defend your pricing. The danger is if you go in at a lower price, it's very, very difficult to then pick that price up. I think what you could do is say, I recognize that you've got constraints. I'm prepared to do the initial work at X, but we'll need to build in a pricing review 6 months down the line.
Okay.
So, yeah, those are some thoughts.
So let me move to another. I think I will give you another 2-3 questions that I will finish for the next 10 minutes.
Okay.
So let's see. I have another question here on the screen, but I'll ask this one first. What should we do when a client, again, it's a question from an audience member here. What should we do when a client is stuck with another service provider? So you have a client which is stuck with another service provider. The client wants to come to us, but is unable to do because of inside knowledge and control over the records the other service provider possesses.
Okay. I mean, it's always the great argument for the existing provider to say, well, you can't afford to go somewhere else because we've got so much expertise, we know so much, and you'd have to educate your
and they also
provider.
have insider information from your company, which they say, I know this is unethical to say to you, but they say, yeah, we know your stuff, so where are you going to go now? So what do you do with them?
Are you saying that they've got it? Okay. If the existing provider is unwilling to part with part with their client's data, I think the client, you need to help the client be assertive, because, as you said, this is unethical and it's probably illegal in most jurisdictions. The client belongs to the data. Sorry, the data belongs to the client, not to the firm. So I think the client could insist on being given that data. So I think you need to help the client get that. The other thing that you might need to do is accept the cost. The client wants to move to you. Their existing provider won't part with the data and the information and the records. The client may need to invest some time in starting afresh with the data, and you might need to agree to invest some time to help them do that. But my first step would be to help the client make their current provider part with the records, which they should do in most situations. And my second solution would be to work with the client to create the new records using the argument that much of the new data is, so much of the old data may well be corrupt, out of date, and so forth, and by freshening the data and refreshing the data, they know that they've got the right information. I think you're also going to have to make a very strong case and keep reminding the client why it's right for them to move to you. And frankly, in this situation, pointing out why they shouldn't stay with a provider who's effectively blackmailing them.
Okay, yeah, it's true. Okay, so the other question here I have is, how do we handle, and this I guess happened to many of us one time or another, how do you handle an angry client who is very aggressive over the phone? So you have an angry client over the phone, very aggressive, how do you handle
that? Put the phone down and run away.
With a smile.
There are good techniques, and I notice when I'm angry as a client, some people are very good at handling this and others are not good. I think the first thing is that fighting the client is not going to work. But on the other hand, just agreeing with the client is not appropriate and just saying, you're right. So the key really is in getting the client to move from emotion to logic, from a childish approach to an adult approach. So using phrases like, I understand you're very upset. What I want to do is find a way to help us solve this problem together. Okay. Please explain, and getting them to explain. So I think moving them from child to adult, if that's familiar to some of the audience, I think is really important. Moving from emotion to logic, not agreeing with everything, but not fighting back. Asking questions like, what are you looking to achieve from this call? What do you want me to do? How can we work on this together? These kind of things. It's not easy, and conflict resolution on the phone is not easy. I think that if a client becomes abusive, then we have to, in a very controlled way, say, I understand you're angry, but swearing at me and shouting at me is not acceptable. Please give me a number. I'm going to call you back, but I can't continue this call. I think we've got to be assertive. Okay. It's a big subject.
I will agree with you. It's a big subject, and I guess sometimes is that time you need a timeout, as we say. You know, you need to take a timeout from that phone
completely.
call and very positively ask your client to call them back. I think that would be a good approach as well.
But you then must do that, because if I'm angry already, it's probably because of poor service. And if I feel that you're just fobbing me off, as it were, I'll get even angrier.
Yes. I have another closing question, but before I make the closing question, I wrote a question as well here. I forgot to ask the question. You know, in professional firms, professionals, you know, we saw from a consultant the question here, from a financial service provider, we had an accountant who made a question. All these professionals, they have a trade, they have an expertise, they have a technical knowledge. And especially when you're a small firm, usually if you want to grow, you have two options. I would say you have many options, but let's take these two options. You have the option of becoming, remaining expert in what you do, which let's say you are a tax expert, or you're an accountant expert in this one thing, or you're a lawyer which is expert in shipping, let's say. So either you remain an expert in that, you grow your firm, yourself, your firm, you hire more experts in that same area, you specialize, you grow into other markets, okay, so you go into other countries, or you remain in your own city, in your own area, and you start doing other things. So you start becoming expert in other areas as well. So you read, you study, you learn more stuff, you know more things, so you can become expert in other things. So which one of the two approaches? Again, you can grow your firm, you can hire other experts, you can affiliate with other experts, you can still grow your firm, but which one do you think works best? Is there a solution in that, or is it both are logical approaches, let's say?
Well, both could be logical. I think that if you've got a market that, or a sector that is seeing growth, then using your own expertise, I think, is a good approach. However, I think what our clients want are what are described as deep generalists. So the depth comes from your expertise in shipping law, as you put it. It's the area that we're deeply expert in. But if I really want to add value to my clients, I will also have a wider generalist business expertise, which allows me to pursue themes and add value to the wider business of my client. So people talk about a T shape, where the vertical of the T is your deep expertise, your technical knowledge, and the horizontal of the bar of the T is your wider business knowledge. And I think that's true for most of us as professionals, is we need to be deep generalists. If I were going to expand my expertise and move out, say, from shipping law into other legal aspects, I think I would always want to expand into related areas rather than to try and become an expert in something completely unrelated. So I'd move outwards incrementally from my area of expertise rather than take a radical shift, because my clients know, my existing clients know what I'm known for, and they draw comfort from that. They could see a shift to a similar expertise, but not to a completely different one.
Okay. All right. So a final question. How can we build clients for life? And can we do that? So how can we build clients for life? What is like a last kind of wrap it up kind of statement from you? How can we keep these clients and make clients for life?
Okay. Let me give you 5 very short answers to that. 1, keep adding value. Don't rely on the last project. 2, you've got to give to get. So don't only sell them things, but give them things as well. A white paper, an expertise, an introduction. Maybe invest some time if they're exploring a new market, invest some of your time with them. Treat your clients like your prospects. So woo them, look after them. Cover the bases, cover the different stakeholders. Make sure that you're not just relying on one point of contact. That's a mistake I've made in the past. But all my long-term relationships, and some of them have been 20 years long, have involved making sure that I was talking to a lot of people. The head of banking that I mentioned, I asked him how many contacts he had in one of the UK's big 4 banks. He said, I reckon I've got 200 contacts there. So he covers the bases. And finally, I'd say manage the quiet times. The times when your client is not spending with you, don't ignore them, don't go away, but keep talking to them, because they will come back and they will need to come back with you. So those are the 5 things I'd highlight as clients for life. Keep adding value, give in order to get, treat clients like prospects, cover the bases, and manage the quiet times.
Okay, so great. So thank you very much, Richard. I don't have any more questions, none from the audience. Matteo is back right on time, Matteo. So thank you very much, Richard.
Fantastic.
Up to you, Matteo.
Great pleasure.
Okay.
I hope that was useful. Can I just say that I'm on LinkedIn, Richard Higham. Just if you're on LinkedIn, make contact with me. There are papers and so forth and useful stuff there, and I'd be happy to be in contact with you. So all you need to do is connect with me, and I'll be delighted to connect with you.
Yes, great.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Marios, for moderating, and thank you very much, Richard, for spreading all this knowledge. I'm going to say that this is one of the webinars in which we actually received most questions from our attendees, so that was a great success in that sense. So thank you for that. Just to wrap things up, get some admin issues out of the way, we will have an audio recording of this event probably next week. We'll have a transcript soon enough. I will blog about it too. So if you don't want to sit through the hour and 15 recording and you'd rather read it, that should be out in a couple of weeks or so. Same exact words, same exact data, etc., just in written form. So with that said, thank you everyone for attending. Thank you again, Marios and Richard, for participating. And hope to see you again in the near future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Goodbye, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.